just felt normal.
You botched that spell where you wanted everyone to forget that Peter Parker's Spider-Man getting some visitors.
Welcome to Z Cineplex, say your ultimate entertainment destination. Welcome to Z Cineplex, the home of entertainment, creativity, and cinematic excitement. Our channel is dedicated to bringing viewers a rich collection of engaging content that celebrates the world of movies, storytelling, and visual entertainment. Whether you're a passionate film enthusiast, someone who enjoys discovering new cinematic experiences, or simply looking for high-quality entertainment, Z Cineplex is designed to be your go-to destination. We strive to create content that is informative, enjoyable, and engaging for audiences of all ages, offering a unique blend of movie-related features, entertainment updates, insightful discussions, creative videos, and much more. Every upload is crafted with attention to quality, ensuring that our viewers receive an enjoyable experience that keeps them coming back for more. At Z Cineplex, we believe that cinema is more than just watching films. It's about experiencing emotions, exploring stories, appreciating creativity, and connecting with people who share the same passion for entertainment. Our mission is to build a vibrant community where movie lovers and entertainment enthusiasts can discover exciting content, share their opinions, and stay connected with the latest trends in the entertainment industry. We are committed to consistently improving our content, embracing new ideas, and delivering videos that entertain, inform, and inspire our growing audience. Whether you're here for movie highlights, entertainment discussions, reviews, cinematic moments, or fresh creative content, Z Cineplex promises an enjoyable journey filled with excitement, quality, and unforgettable entertainment. Join our community by subscribing, turning on notifications, and becoming part of the Z Cineplex family as we continue to explore the fascinating world of cinema and entertainment together. Thank you for your support, and welcome to Z Cineplex, where every video brings entertainment to life. Spider-Man: No Way Home is a 2021 American superhero film based on the Marvel Comics character Spider-Man, produced by Columbia Pictures, Marvel Studios, and Pascal Pictures, and distributed by Sony Pictures Releasing. It serves as the sequel to Spider-Man: Homecoming, 2017, and Spider-Man: Far From Home, 2019, while also functioning as the 27th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU, and one of the franchise's most ambitious crossover events. The film was directed by John Watts from a screenplay by Chris McKenna and Eric Summers, with Kevin Feige and Amy Pascal serving as producers. Tom Holland reprises his role as Peter Parker, Spider-Man, leading an ensemble cast that includes Zendaya, Benedict Cumberbatch, Jacob Batalon, Jon Favreau, Marisa Tomei, Benedict Wong, Tony Revolori, Jamie Foxx, Willem Dafoe, Alfred Molina, Thomas Hayden Church, Rhys Ifans, Andrew Garfield, and Tobey Maguire. Picking up immediately after the events of Far From Home, Peter's secret identity has been exposed to the world by Quentin Beck, causing his personal life, education, and relationships to collapse under intense public scrutiny. Seeking a way to restore his anonymity, Peter turns to Dr. Stephen Strange, asking him to cast a spell that will make the world forget he is Spider-Man. However, Peter repeatedly interferes with the spell to protect the memories of those closest to him, causing the magic to fracture and tear open the boundaries of the multiverse. As a result, villains and heroes from alternate realities, individuals who know Peter Parker as Spider-Man in their own universes, are pulled into the MCU, forcing Peter to confront enemies from previous Spider-Man film franchises while learning difficult lessons about responsibility, sacrifice, and redemption. Rather than simply sending the displaced villains back to their inevitable deaths, Peter chooses to cure them of their destructive conditions, a decision that leads to devastating personal consequences, including the death of Aunt May. In the film's emotional climax, Peter is joined by alternate versions of Spider-Man portrayed by Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, uniting the three cinematic Spider-Men for the first time to battle the multiversal villains and restore order to reality. To repair the collapsing multiverse, Peter ultimately sacrifices his own identity by asking Doctor Strange to cast a new spell that erases all memories of Peter Parker from everyone in the universe, leaving him completely alone while preserving the existence of Spider-Man. Development of a third MCU Spider-Man film began during the production of Spider-Man: Homecoming in 2017, but the project faced uncertainty in August 2019 when negotiations between Sony Pictures and Marvel Studios over the future of Spider-Man temporarily collapsed, resulting in Marvel's departure from the franchise. Following an overwhelming public backlash and renewed negotiations, the studios reached a new agreement the following month that allowed Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige to continue co-producing the film while retaining Spider-Man within the MCU. John Watts returned to direct, with Chris McKenna and Eric Summers returning as writers alongside Tom Holland and the principal cast. Production took place under extensive secrecy due to the film's multiverse storyline, with principal photography running from October 2020 through March 2021 in New York City, Atlanta, and various soundstages under strict COVID-19 safety protocols. The filmmakers deliberately concealed the return of legacy Spider-Man actors Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, as well as numerous returning villains from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy and Mark Webb's The Amazing Spider-Man films. Despite widespread online speculation, set leaks, and persistent rumors, Sony, Marvel Studios, and the cast consistently denied or avoided confirming the crossover, making the eventual reveal one of the most celebrated surprises in modern blockbuster cinema. The film seamlessly connected 2 decades of Spider-Man films into a single narrative, serving as both a celebration of the character's cinematic legacy and a major milestone in the MCU's exploration of the multiverse, paving the way for future projects such as Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Spider-Man: No Way Home had its world premiere at the Fox Village Theater in Westwood, Los Angeles, on December 13, 2021, before being released theatrically in the United States on December 17, 2021. As part of Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The film became a worldwide cultural phenomenon and received widespread acclaim from critics and audiences alike, who praised its emotional storytelling, nostalgic celebration of Spider-Man's cinematic history, ambitious multiverse concept, spectacular action sequences, visual effects, musical score by Michael Giacchino, and especially the performances of Tom Holland, Willem Dafoe, Andrew Garfield, and Tobey Maguire. It was hailed as one of the MCU's strongest installments and one of the greatest Spider-Man films ever made. Commercially, the film became one of the biggest box office successes in cinema history, grossing approximately $1.952 billion worldwide against a production budget of around $200 million, making it the highest-grossing Spider-Man film, Sony Pictures' highest-grossing release, the highest-grossing film of 2021, and one of the highest-grossing films of all time. It also became the first film released during the COVID-19 pandemic era to surpass $1 billion globally and broke numerous domestic and international box office records during its theatrical run. The film received numerous awards and nominations, including an Academy Award nomination for Best Visual Effects at the 94th Academy Awards, along with recognition from the BAFTA Awards, Critics' Choice Awards, Saturn Awards, and various critics' organizations. An expanded edition titled Spider-Man: No Way Home Math and More Fun Stuff version, featuring approximately 11 minutes of additional footage and extended character moments, was released worldwide in September 2022. The film's conclusion established a fresh beginning for Peter Parker, setting the stage for the next chapter of his story. A fourth MCU Spider-Man film starring Tom Holland, titled Spider-Man: Brand New Day, is scheduled for release on July 31, 2026, launching a new trilogy that continues Peter Parker's journey following the events of No Way Home. Following the events of Spider-Man: Far From Home, the world learns that Peter Parker is Spider-Man after the dying words of Quentin Beck, Mysterio, are manipulated to portray Peter as a murderer responsible for Beck's death and a terrorist attack in London. Peter, his girlfriend Michelle M.J. Jones-Watson, and his best friend Ned Leeds are immediately thrust into the center of an international media frenzy, with reporters and protesters surrounding Peter's apartment and accusing him of murder. The Department of Damage Control, DOD, launches an investigation, arresting Peter, MJ, Ned, and May Parker for questioning while confiscating their electronic devices. Although renowned defense attorney Matt Murdock successfully gets the criminal charges against Peter dismissed due to a lack of evidence, he warns Peter that public opinion will be far more difficult to overcome than the legal system. Despite being cleared of wrongdoing, Peter and everyone associated with him continue to suffer relentless harassment from the media and the public. Their futures are further jeopardized when the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, rejects the college applications of Peter, MJ, and Ned because of the controversy surrounding Peter's exposed identity. Feeling personally responsible for ruining the lives of the people he loves, Peter desperately seeks another solution and visits the New York Sanctum, asking Dr. Stephen Strange to use magic to make the entire world forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Although Strange initially refuses, he eventually agrees and begins casting an ancient memory-altering spell. However, Peter repeatedly interrupts the spell by requesting numerous exceptions so that MJ, Ned, May, and others can still remember his identity. Each interruption destabilizes the spell until it spirals out of control, forcing Strange to contain its dangerous energy before it completely collapses reality. Realizing the spell cannot simply be recast, Strange suggests Peter first attempt a more practical solution by convincing an MIT administrator to reconsider MJ's and Ned's admissions. Peter intercepts MIT Assistant Vice Chancellor Emery Barrientos on the Alexander Hamilton Bridge, but before he can plead his case, the bridge is attacked by Dr. Otto Octavius, Dr. Octopus, who has mysteriously appeared from another universe believing Peter to be the Spider-Man he once fought. During their battle, Otto's mechanical tentacles steer nanotechnology away from Peter's iron spider suit, but the advanced Stark technology instead fuses with Otto's tentacles, allowing Peter to override and control them. Before Peter can fully understand what is happening, another visitor from a different universe arrives, Norman Osborn, whose fractured Green Goblin personality is battling for control of his mind. Strange suddenly teleports Peter, Otto, and Osborn back to the Sanctum, where he reveals that Peter's corrupted spell fractured the boundaries of the multiverse, pulling into the MCU anyone from alternate realities who knew Spider-Man's secret identity. Strange imprisons Otto alongside another multiversal visitor, Dr. Kurt Connors, the Lizard, and tasks Peter, MJ, and Ned with locating the remaining interdimensional arrivals before they can cause further damage. Using magical technology that tracks multiversal energy, the trio locates Max Dillon, Electro, and Flint Marko, Sandman, at a military research facility where Dillon absorbs enormous quantities of electricity, transforming into a more powerful version of Electro. Peter succeeds in capturing Dillon after a difficult confrontation, while Marko willingly surrenders because he simply wishes to return home to his daughter. Meanwhile, Norman Osborn regains temporary control over his mind and destroys his Green Goblin mask in an effort to reject his violent alter ego. Confused and frightened, he seeks refuge at FAST, where Aunt May comforts him before Peter brings him to the sanctum. As the captured villains discuss their histories, Otto, Norman, Dylan, Connors, and Markle gradually realize they were all taken from their respective universes at moments immediately before their apparent deaths while battling Spider-Man. Doctor Strange prepares to reverse the contained spell and send each of them back to the exact moments from which they came, believing this is the only way to restore the multiverse. Peter, however, is horrified after learning that sending them home would likely doom several of them to die. Inspired by May's unwavering belief that everyone deserves a second chance, Peter insists they should first cure the villains of the conditions that turned them into monsters, potentially allowing them to survive their destinies. Strange refuses to risk the stability of reality for what he considers an impossible moral experiment, prompting Peter to steal the magical containment box holding the spell. The two engage in an elaborate battle through the mirror dimension, where Peter cleverly uses his scientific understanding of geometry to trap Strange within his own magical prison before escaping with the spell. Peter then brings the villains to Happy Hogan's condominium, where he and May establish a laboratory using Stark Industries technology. Peter successfully repairs Otto's damaged inhibitor chip, restoring Otto's sanity and freeing him from the influence of his artificial intelligence control tentacles. Before Peter can complete cures for the remaining villains, Norman's Green Goblin personality violently reasserts itself, manipulating the others by convincing them that Peter is trying to rob them of the power that defines them. The Goblin persuades Electro and the Lizard to rebel while Sandman flees amid the chaos. A devastating battle erupts throughout Happy's apartment complex. During the conflict, the Green Goblin brutally overpowers Peter and fatally injures Aunt May with his glider before escaping. Despite her mortal wounds, May tells Peter the words that define Spider-Man's legacy: with great power, there must also come great responsibility. She dies moments later in Peter's arms, leaving him overwhelmed by grief, guilt, and anger. As Peter disappears to mourn alone, MJ and Ned become increasingly worried. While experimenting with Doctor Strange's sling ring, Ned unexpectedly discovers that he possesses a natural aptitude for magic, accidentally opening portals across the multiverse. Hoping to locate Peter, Ned instead summons another version of Spider-Man, portrayed by Andrew Garfield, followed by yet another portrayed by Tobey Maguire. The two alternate Spider-Men explain that they were also pulled into the MCU by Strange's corrupted spell. Together, they eventually find the devastated Peter Parker of the MCU, who was consumed by grief and determined simply to send the villains back to their deaths. Sharing their own painful experiences, including the deaths of Uncle Ben and Gwen Stacy, the crushing weight of guilt, and the responsibility of continuing to be Spider-Man despite unimaginable loss of the alternate Peters help Peter rediscover his sense of purpose. The three Spider-Men work together to develop scientific cures for each villain before luring them to the Statue of Liberty, where Captain America's new shield has recently been installed. An epic battle unfolds as the Spider-Men coordinate their abilities and gradually administer the cures. Peter cures the Lizard while Sandman is restored to his human form, and the redeemed Otto Octavius arrives to help neutralize Electro by powering Peter's new energy-draining device. At the same time, Ned accidentally frees Doctor Strange from the mirror dimension. However, before Strange can restore the spell, the Green Goblin steals the magical containment box and deliberately shatters it, causing the barriers between universes to collapse completely. Cracks spread across the sky as countless silhouettes of individuals who know Spider-Man's identity begin entering the MCU from across the multiverse. While Doctor Strange struggles to hold back the collapsing dimensions, Peter is consumed by rage and nearly kills the Green Goblin with his own glider. At the last moment, Peter Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, intervenes and prevents Peter from crossing the moral line, though he is stabbed by the Goblin in the process. Regaining control of himself, Peter instead allows Peter Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, to help him inject Norman Osborn with the completed cure, permanently restoring Norman's sanity and freeing him from the Green Goblin's influence. Realizing that the only way to permanently seal the multiverse is to eliminate the memory that connects every universe, his own identity as Peter Parker, Peter asks Doctor Strange to cast one final spell, causing everyone, including MJ, Ned, the Avengers, and every person on Earth, to completely forget that Peter Parker ever existed. Before Strange completes the spell, Peter tearfully promises MJ and Ned that he will find them again and remind them of who he is. Strange reluctantly performs the spell, successfully repairing the multiverse and returning every displaced visitor to their original universes. Among those sent home is Eddie Brock, who unknowingly leaves behind a tiny fragment of the alien Venom symbiote, planting the seeds for future events. 2 weeks later, Peter visits MJ, who now works at a coffee shop, intending to reintroduce himself. However, after seeing the injuries she sustained during the battle and realizing she and Ned are finally able to live normal, happy lives free from the burdens of knowing Spider-Man, Peter quietly abandons his plan and leaves without revealing his identity. Later, Peter visits May's grave, where he encounters Happy Hogan, who no longer remembers Peter but still mourns May's death. Inspired by her sacrifice and determined to honor her final lesson, Peter moves into a modest apartment, creates a completely new hands-on Spider-Man suit without Stark technology, and embraces a simpler, more independent life as New York City's friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, swinging through the snow-covered streets to begin a new chapter with no friends, no family, and no one left who remembers Peter Parker. Tom Holland stars as Peter Parker, Spider-Man, a teenager from Queens who gained extraordinary spider-like abilities after being bitten by a radioactive spider and who became one of the youngest members of the Avengers. Following the events of Spider-Man, Far From Home, 2019, Peter's life is thrown into chaos after his secret identity is publicly exposed by Quentin Beck. Unlike the optimistic and enthusiastic hero seen in previous Marvel Cinematic Universe (MCU) films, Peter is portrayed as emotionally exhausted, guilt-ridden, and increasingly isolated as he struggles with the devastating consequences of his identity becoming public. Throughout the film, Holland delivers his most mature performance as the character, portraying Peter's emotional journey from fear and desperation to grief, sacrifice, and ultimately selflessness. Holland explained that Peter feels defeated, insecure, and overwhelmed by the burden of responsibility, allowing the film to explore a significantly darker and more emotionally complex version of Spider-Man than audiences had previously seen. After portraying more mature characters in projects such as Cherry, 2021, Holland noted that returning to Peter required him to rediscover the youthful innocence, nervous charm, and optimistic personality that defined the character, while simultaneously portraying his transition into a more independent and seasoned superhero. By the film's conclusion, Zendaya portrays Michelle M.J. Jones-Watson, Peter Parker's intelligent, sarcastic, and fiercely loyal classmate and girlfriend. No Way Home officially reveals her full surname as Jones-Watson, bringing the MCU incarnation closer to Spider-Man's iconic comic book love interest, Mary Jane Watson, while maintaining the character's unique personality established in previous films. MJ serves as Peter's emotional anchor throughout the story, standing beside him despite the public scrutiny surrounding his identity and actively assisting in tracking and capturing the multiversal visitors. Her relationship with Peter deepens as the two openly express their love for one another before the tragic conclusion forces Peter to erase himself from her memory. One of the film's most emotional moments occurs during the final battle when Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man rescues MJ from a fatal fall, providing emotional closure to his own past failure to save Gwen Stacy. Benedict Cumberbatch returns as Dr. Stephen Strange, the former world-renowned neurosurgeon who became one of Earth's greatest masters of the mystic arts after a life-changing accident. Now operating from the New York sanctum while Wong serves as Sorcerer Supreme, Strange reluctantly agrees to help Peter by casting a dangerous memory-altering spell. When Peter repeatedly interferes with the spell, Strange finds himself responsible for containing a multiversal catastrophe. Unlike Tony Stark, who served as Peter's mentor in earlier MCU films, Strange functions more as a colleague and an authority figure whose pragmatic worldview frequently clashes with Peter's compassion. Co-writer Chris McKenna described Strange as the film's voice of reason, emphasizing his belief that preserving reality must take precedence over saving individual lives, even when Peter refuses to accept that moral compromise. Jacob Batalon reprises his role as Ned Leeds, Peter Parker's best friend and closest confidant. Loyal, humorous, and endlessly supportive. Ned remains by Peter's side throughout the crisis despite becoming a target himself after Peter's identity is exposed. During the film, Ned unexpectedly demonstrates an innate aptitude for magic by successfully using Doctor Strange's sling ring to create interdimensional portals, ultimately summoning the alternate Spider-Man from other universes. This surprising magical ability becomes one of the story's most significant turning points. For the role, Batalon underwent a dramatic physical transformation, losing approximately 102 pounds, 46 kilograms, before filming began. Jon Favreau returns as Happy Hogan, the longtime head of security for Stark Industries and former chauffeur, bodyguard, and trusted friend of Tony Stark. Happy continues serving as one of Peter's father figures while also maintaining a romantic relationship with Aunt May. His apartment becomes the temporary headquarters where Peter attempts to rehabilitate the multiversal villains using Stark technology. Following May's death and the spell that erases Peter Parker from existence, Happy remembers May but no longer remembers Peter, creating one of the film's most bittersweet moments during their final conversation at her gravesite. Jamie Foxx reprises his role as Max Dillon, Electro, the former Oscorp electrical engineer from the universe of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, 2014, who gained the ability to manipulate electricity after a laboratory accident involving genetically engineered electric eels. Unlike his previous appearance, Electro undergoes a substantial redesign that abandons his blue, energy-based appearance in favor of a more human look inspired by his classic Marvel Comics counterpart, complete with yellow electrical energy. Fox's performance presents a more confident, charismatic, and dangerous version of the character, whose newfound access to the MCU's advanced electrical infrastructure dramatically increases his powers before Peter ultimately cures him. Willem Dafoe reprises his legendary role as Norman Osborn, Green Goblin, the brilliant Oscorp founder from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, 2002, whose experimental performance-enhancing serum created a violent split personality that transformed him into Spider-Man's greatest enemy. Dafoe's performance received universal acclaim, with many critics considering it one of the film's strongest elements. Rather than simply recreating his earlier portrayal, Dafoe presents a more psychologically unstable and physically intimidating Green Goblin who manipulates both Peter and the other villains before orchestrating the film's central tragedy. Norman's costume evolves throughout the story after he destroys his original Goblin mask, creating a battle-damaged appearance that more closely resembles his comic book counterpart. Digital de-aging technology was subtly employed to help Dafoe resemble his earlier appearance while preserving the expressive intensity of his performance. Alfred Molina returns as Dr. Otto Octavius, Dr. Octopus, the brilliant scientist from Spider-Man 2, 2004. Whose artificially intelligent mechanical tentacles fused permanently to his body following a failed fusion experiment. Continuing directly from moments before Otto's death in Raimi's film, No Way Home explores his redemption after Peter repairs the inhibitor chip controlling his tentacles, restoring his sanity. Molina was digitally de-aged to maintain continuity with his earlier appearance, while his iconic mechanical arms were recreated entirely through modern CGI rather than the practical puppetry extensively used in the 2004 film. Benedict Wong appears as Wong, Doctor Strange's trusted friend and mentor, who became the new Sorcerer Supreme during Strange's 5-year absence following the blip. Although reluctant to participate in Strange's risky spell, Wong warns him not to tamper with dangerous magic before temporarily leaving the sanctum, inadvertently allowing the disastrous spell to proceed. Tony Revolori reprises his role as Eugene Flash Thompson, Peter Parker's wealthy classmate and former academic rival. Still unaware that Peter is Spider-Man, Flash capitalizes on Peter's public identity by publishing a best-selling memoir detailing their supposed friendship, while simultaneously struggling with his own desire for popularity and recognition. Marissa Tomei returns as May Parker, Peter's compassionate aunt and moral compass. Throughout the MCU, May serves the narrative role traditionally occupied by Uncle Ben, guiding Peter with unwavering empathy and encouraging him to help those in need regardless of the personal cost. Her belief that every individual deserves a second chance motivates Peter's decision to rehabilitate the multiversal villains instead of sending them to their deaths before dying from injuries inflicted by the Green Goblin. May delivers Spider-Man's defining philosophy: with great power, there must also come great responsibility, providing Peter with the lesson that ultimately shapes his future as an independent hero. Andrew Garfield returns as an alternate Peter Parker, Spider-Man, reprising his role from Mark Webb's The Amazing Spider-Man films. Haunted by his inability to save Gwen Stacy in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, 2014. This older and more emotionally scarred Peter initially describes himself as bitter and consumed by rage following her death. The other Spider-Men refer to him as Peter 3, while Marvel officially identifies him as the Amazing Spider-Man. Garfield embraced portraying the middle brother of the trio, exploring a Peter who has endured years of loneliness and regret. His emotional redemption arrives when he successfully saves MJ from falling during the Statue of Liberty battle, overcoming the trauma that had haunted him for years. Garfield later described returning to the role as an opportunity to provide closure for his version of Spider-Man while sharing meaningful scenes with both Tom Holland and Tobey Maguire. Tobey Maguire reprises his role as another alternate Peter Parker, Spider-Man, returning from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. Referred to by the others as Peter 2 and officially designated by Marvel as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, Maguire portrays the oldest and most experienced Spider-Man, serving as the emotional mentor among the trio. Unlike his counterparts, his Spider-Man naturally produces organic webbing instead of relying on mechanical web shooters. Maguire intentionally revealed only limited details about his character's life following Spider-Man 3, 2007, allowing audiences to imagine the years that passed while emphasizing his wisdom, compassion, and emotional maturity. During the climax, Peter 2 prevents Holland's Peter from murdering the Green Goblin, reinforcing Spider-Man's unwavering moral code even at great personal risk. Recyphens reprises his role as Dr. Kurt Connors, Lizard, the Ascorp geneticist from The Amazing Spider-Man, 2012. Who transformed himself into a massive reptilian creature while attempting to regenerate his missing arm through experimental cross-species genetics. Thomas Hayden Church returns as Flint Marko, Sandman, the sympathetic former criminal from Spider-Man 3, 2007, whose accidental exposure to a particle accelerator granted him the ability to transform into living sand. Both actors primarily provided voice performances for their characters, while archival footage from their original films was used when the cured villains returned to their human forms. Director John Watts also performed motion capture reference work for Sandman during production. The film also features Charlie Cox, reprising his acclaimed role as Matt Murdock, the blind attorney and secret vigilante Daredevil, previously portrayed in Marvel Television's Netflix series. Although his appearance is brief, Murdock successfully clears Peter of criminal charges while subtly demonstrating his heightened senses and reflexes, officially introducing the character into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Tom Hardy makes an uncredited mid-credits cameo as Eddie Brock, Venom, transported from Sony's Spider-Man universe, SSU, into the MCU by the corrupted spell. Although Eddie is returned to his own universe after Doctor Strange's final spell, he unintentionally leaves behind a small fragment of the Venom symbiote, laying the foundation for future MCU stories involving the alien organism. Returning from previous MCU Spider-Man films are Angry Rice as Betty Brant, Peter's classmate and Ned's former girlfriend Hannibal Buress as Midtown School gym teacher Coach Wilson Martin Starr as academic decathlon teacher Roger Harrington, J.B. Smoove as science teacher Julius Dell, J.K. Simmons as the sensationalist Daily Bugle host J. Jonah Jameson, who relentlessly fuels public hatred towards Spider-Man, and Gary Weeks as Department of Damage Control agent Foster. Jake Gyllenhaal appears through archival footage as Quentin Beck, Mysterio, whose manipulated broadcast triggers the events of the film. Additional supporting performances include Paula Newsome as MIT Assistant Vice Chancellor Emery Barrientos, Arian Mode as Department of Damage Control Agent Cleary, Mary Rivera as Ned's grandmother, and Christopher Nate Martinez as the bartender serving Eddie Brock during the film's mid-credits scene. Several planned appearances, including cameos by Harry Holland, the brother of Tom Holland, and Lexi Rabe, who portrayed Morgan Stark in Avengers: Endgame, 2019, were ultimately removed from the original theatrical cut before release. Development of Spider-Man: No Way Home began during the production of Spider-Man: Homecoming, 2017, when Marvel Studios and Sony Pictures mapped out a trilogy for Tom Holland's Spider-Man within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. From the outset, the filmmakers envisioned each installment taking place during a different year of Peter Parker's high school life, with a third film originally intended to depict Peter's senior year. In June 2017, Tom Holland confirmed that the planned trilogy would follow this progression, while Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige later revealed in July 2019 that the third installment would tell a Peter Parker story that has never been done before on film. This statement reflected the unprecedented ending of Spider-Man: Far From Home, 2019, in which Quentin Beck, Mysterio, publicly exposed Peter Parker's secret identity as Spider-Man and framed him for Beck's death, fundamentally changing the direction of the franchise. Unlike previous Spider-Man films, which largely focused on balancing Peter's superhero life with his personal relationships, the sequel would begin with Peter's identity known to the entire world, forcing the filmmakers to explore entirely new emotional and narrative territory. By August 2019, development on both the third and potential fourth MCU Spider-Man film was already underway. Sony Pictures hoped to bring back Tom Holland and director Jon Watts, although Holland was only contractually obligated to appear in one more Spider-Man film, while Watts had completed his original two-film directing agreement and would need to negotiate a new contract. At the same time, however, the future of Spider-Man in the MCU was thrown into serious uncertainty as Marvel Studios, the Walt Disney Studios, and Sony Pictures entered difficult negotiations regarding their shared partnership. Under the existing agreement established in 2015, Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige creatively produced the Spider-Man films for Sony while Disney received a relatively small percentage of the box office revenue and retained the characters' merchandising rights. Following the enormous commercial success of Spider-Man: Far From Home, which became Sony Pictures' highest-grossing film at the time, Sony sought to continue the arrangement largely unchanged while expanding the partnership to additional films. Disney, meanwhile, expressed concern about Kevin Feige's growing workload as producer of the increasingly expansive Marvel Cinematic Universe and requested a significantly larger financial stake, reportedly between 25% and 50% in any future Spider-Man films produced under Feige's supervision. Negotiations ultimately reached an impasse, and in August 2019, Sony announced that Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige would no longer be involved in future Spider-Man films. The studio thanked Feige for his contributions to Homecoming and Far From Home while stating that it intended to continue the franchise independently. By this point, screenwriters Chris McKenna and Eric Summers had already begun writing the screenplay for the third film, while Jon Watts was reportedly considering offers to direct several major studio projects, including other Marvel properties. Due to the uncertainty surrounding Spider-Man's future, the announcement triggered one of the largest fan backlashes in recent blockbuster history. Social media campaigns urging Sony and Disney to resolve their differences quickly gained worldwide attention, with many fans expressing concern that Spider-Man would be removed from the Marvel Cinematic Universe after only 2 solo films. In September 2019, Sony Pictures Entertainment chairman Tony Vinciquo stated that for the moment the door is closed on Spider-Man remaining in the MCU and indicated that the character would instead become part of Sony's Spider-Man universe, SSU, alongside characters such as Venom and Morbius. Although Vinciquo praised Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige, emphasizing the respect between the companies, he also stressed Sony's confidence in continuing the franchise independently. Behind the scenes, However, negotiations quietly resumed. Tom Holland played a crucial role in helping reopen discussions after personally contacting Disney CEO Bob Iger and Sony Pictures Motion Picture Group Chairman Tom Rothman, encouraging both sides to continue working together for the benefit of the fans. Holland later described those conversations as among the most important moments of his career, while Iger credited both Holland's diplomacy and the overwhelming public response as significant factors in bringing the studios back to the negotiating table. At the end of September 2019, Sony Pictures and Disney officially announced a new agreement that ensured Spider-Man would remain within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Under the revised deal, Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige returned as producers alongside Amy Pascal, while Disney reportedly agreed to co-finance approximately 25% of the production budget in exchange for 25% of the film's profits, while continuing to retain Spider-Man's merchandising rights. The agreement also guaranteed that Tom Holland's Spider-Man could appear in at least one additional Marvel Studios crossover film beyond his own solo sequel, while simultaneously allowing the character to interact with Sony's expanding Spider-Man universe. Kevin Feige expressed his excitement that Spider-Man would continue to exist within the MCU, describing the renewed partnership as a major victory for both studios and audiences. Sony likewise praised its collaboration with Marvel Studios, emphasizing that both companies shared the same desire to continue telling Peter Parker's story together. The agreement effectively preserved the interconnected continuity that audiences had embraced since Captain America: Civil War, 2016, and laid the foundation for the ambitious multiverse storyline that would ultimately define Spider-Man: No Way Home. In the weeks following the renewed agreement, Jon Watts entered final negotiations to return as director, bringing continuity to the creative team that had successfully launched Holland's Spider-Man trilogy. During interviews in early October 2019, Bob Iger publicly acknowledged that the renewed partnership was made possible not only by Tom Holland's efforts but also by the passionate response from fans around the world, admitting that both Disney and Sony had initially overlooked the importance of audience investment in Spider-Man's future. Tom Rothman similarly described the revised agreement as a win-win-win for Sony, Disney, and moviegoers, explaining that many reports surrounding the earlier negotiations had failed to capture the full complexity of the discussions taking place behind closed doors. By mid-October 2019, Zendaya was officially confirmed to reprise her role as Michelle M.J. Jones-Watson, becoming one of the first returning cast members announced for the sequel. With Tom Holland, Zendaya, Jon Watts, Kevin Feige, Amy Pascal, Chris McKenna, and Eric Summers all officially returning, the core creative team was reunited, allowing production to move forward on what would ultimately become one of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's most ambitious, emotionally resonant, and commercially successful films. Screenwriters Chris McKenna and Eric Summers began intensive work on the screenplay for Spider-Man: No Way Home in late 2019, immediately following the successful resolution of the negotiations that kept Spider-Man within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Their earliest creative challenge was determining how to continue Peter Parker's story after the shocking ending of Spider-Man: Far From Home, 2019, which publicly exposed his identity as Spider-Man. The writers initially explored several different narrative directions, including making Kraven the Hunter the film's primary antagonist, an idea that director Jon Watts had enthusiastically discussed with Tom Holland. However, the concept was ultimately abandoned after Sony Pictures decided that Kraven should first be introduced in his own standalone film before appearing in crossover projects. Searching for a more emotionally driven storyline, McKenna and Summers became inspired by Frank Capra's 1946 classic It's a Wonderful Life. Rather than focusing solely on a traditional superhero conflict, they envisioned a story centered on Peter Parker desperately wishing that the world could forget he was Spider-Man after his life had been destroyed by the revelation of his identity. This concept naturally led to the inclusion of Dr. Stephen Strange, whose mastery of magic could plausibly grant Peter's wish while simultaneously opening the door to much larger consequences. Once Strange entered the story, the writers began exploring the idea of the multiverse, which had only recently been introduced into the MCU through projects such as Doctor Strange, 2016, and was being further developed for future Marvel productions. Initially, the multiverse was intended to serve only as a subtle tease, with perhaps one or two references to previous Spider-Man films. As brainstorming continued, however, the filmmakers realized that the concept offered an unprecedented opportunity to unite nearly 2 decades of Spider-Man cinema. They gradually expanded the story into an ambitious crossover that would bring together characters from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy and Mark Webb's The Amazing Spider-Man films, transforming the project into one of the most ambitious superhero films ever attempted. According to McKenna and Summers, once Marvel Studios and Sony Pictures collectively committed to embracing the multiverse concept, the creative team understood that they needed to fully embrace its potential rather than treating it as a simple nostalgia-driven gimmick. The writers initially drafted a screenplay that included virtually every major supporting character and villain from the previous Spider-Man film franchises, creating what they later admitted had become an overwhelming collection of returning faces. As development progressed, they recognized that they had bitten off more than they could chew and significantly streamlined the cast to ensure that the emotional focus remained on Tom Holland's Peter Parker. Their primary creative philosophy became ensuring that every returning hero and villain existed to advance Peter's personal journey rather than functioning as fan service cameos. Instead of creating what McKenna described as curtain calls for beloved legacy characters, the writers carefully integrated each returning figure into Peter's emotional arc, allowing every appearance to reinforce the film's central themes of responsibility, redemption, grief, forgiveness, and sacrifice. The screenplay gradually evolved into a story that celebrated Spider-Man's cinematic history while remaining, at its heart, a coming-of-age tale about Holland's Peter learning what it truly means to become Spider-Man without the guidance of Tony Stark or the support of those closest to him. One of the screenplay's most significant changes involved Norman Osborn, Green Goblin. In the earliest drafts, although Norman appeared among the multiversal villains, he was not intended to serve as the film's primary antagonist. As various alternate storylines and characters were removed during revisions, McKenna and Summers concluded that the Green Goblin possessed the strongest emotional and thematic connection to Peter Parker. They extensively rewrote the screenplay to position Norman as the central villain, giving him a more psychologically layered role than in Spider-Man 2002. Rather than simply recreating his earlier confrontation with Spider-Man, the writers explored the duality between Norman Osborn and his violent Green Goblin persona, portraying him as both the tragic victim and Peter's greatest moral test. This restructuring also allowed the Green Goblin to become directly responsible for the film's defining emotional tragedy of the death of May Parker, thereby placing Peter in a position remarkably similar to previous cinematic Spider-Man who had suffered devastating personal losses. The writers intentionally used Norman's manipulation and brutality to force Holland's Peter into confronting the temptation of revenge before ultimately embracing the lesson that with great power, there must also come great responsibility. This creative decision transformed Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin into the emotional centerpiece of the film and one of the MCU's most memorable villains. During early development, several other ideas were considered before ultimately being abandoned. One notable concept involved introducing America Chavez, who would have filled a magical apprentice role assisting Doctor Strange and helping Peter navigate the multiverse. As the screenplay evolved, however, many of those narrative functions were transferred to Ned Leeds, whose surprising ability to use a sling ring became one of the film's major plot developments. America Chavez was subsequently reserved for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness 2022, where she made her MCU debut. Throughout development, McKenna and Summers continuously adjusted the screenplay to balance emotional storytelling with the increasingly ambitious multiverse concept, ensuring that the film never lost sight of Peter Parker as its central protagonist despite its enormous ensemble cast. By the end of 2019, principal photography was expected to begin during the middle of 2020, with the screenplay still undergoing active revisions. McKenna and Summers continued refining the first draft well into March 2020, carefully reshaping the narrative as the MCU's broader plans evolved. Shortly afterward, the COVID-19 pandemic caused major disruptions throughout the global film industry, forcing Sony Pictures to delay the film's theatrical release from its original schedule to November 5, 2021. Continued pandemic-related uncertainty later prompted another release shift to December 17, 2021, which ultimately became the film's final release date. These delays also had significant creative consequences. Spider-Man: No Way Home had originally been intended to take place after Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, meaning Doctor Strange would already have extensive first-hand knowledge of the multiverse when Marvel Studios reorganized its release calendar. However, No Way Home was moved ahead of Multiverse of Madness, forcing McKenna and Summers to substantially rewrite portions of the script. Doctor Strange's dialogue, motivations, and understanding of multiversal realities were revised so that he approached the phenomenon as something mysterious and unpredictable rather than familiar territory. McKenna later remarked that this alteration unexpectedly strengthened the story because Strange was now dealing with the fear of the unknown, making Peter's reckless interference with the spell feel even more dangerous and consequential. Throughout 2020, additional cast members gradually joined the project as development accelerated. In June, Marissa Tomei officially confirmed her return as May Parker, expressing hope that the film would further explore May's humanitarian work as a community organizer through the FEAST organization. During the same period, Kevin Feige personally contacted Charlie Cox about reprising his acclaimed role as Matt Murdock, Daredevil, marking the character's long-awaited integration into the Marvel Cinematic Universe following the conclusion of Marvel Television's Netflix series. McKenna and Summers briefly considered expanding Murdock's role into a more substantial supporting character, but ultimately decided to limit his screen time to avoid distracting from Peter Parker's emotional journey. In July 2020, Tom Holland confirmed that production was scheduled to begin later that year and continue into early 2021, while Sony finalized the film's December release date. Tony Revolori was also confirmed to return as Flash Thompson, maintaining continuity with the previous MCU Spider-Man films. As production preparations intensified in October 2020, several major casting announcements generated enormous excitement while simultaneously fueling widespread speculation about the film's true scope. Jacob Batalon and Benedict Cumberbatch were officially confirmed to reprise their MCU roles as Ned Leeds and Dr. Stephen Strange, while Jamie Foxx was unexpectedly announced to be returning as Max Dillon, Electro, reprising his role from Mark Webb's The Amazing Spider-Man 2, 2014. Foxx's casting immediately sparked rumors that the film would involve the multiverse and feature characters from earlier Spider-Man franchises. Despite the growing speculation, Marvel Studios and Sony Pictures refused to comment on the numerous reports linking Alfred Molina, Willem Dafoe, Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, and other legacy actors to the project. Even as principal photography approached, several of these performers had not yet officially signed contracts, creating uncertainty regarding whether the ambitious crossover could actually be realized. Tom Holland later recalled that the production depended on securing the participation of every essential returning actor, explaining that the film was effectively an all-or-nothing undertaking. Had any of the key legacy performers declined to return, the entire multiverse storyline would likely have required fundamental restructuring. Fortunately, the remaining negotiations were ultimately completed, allowing the filmmakers to proceed with what would become one of the most ambitious crossover events in superhero film history. Second unit photography for Spider-Man: No Way Home began on October 14, 2020, in New York City under the working title Serenity Now, a codename used to conceal the production from the public. Over several days, the crew captured extensive establishing shots, location photography, and visual effects reference plates that would later be integrated into the film's large-scale CGI sequences. Filming took place throughout the Queens neighborhoods of Astoria, Sunnyside, and Long Island City, recreating Peter Parker's familiar home environment following the public exposure of his identity. Additional location shooting occurred on October 23 in Greenwich Village, Manhattan, where exterior sequences and environmental footage were captured to establish New York City's atmosphere. These early shoots primarily focused on background photography rather than scenes involving the principal cast, allowing the visual effects team to begin constructing the film's digitally enhanced version of New York months before full-scale production commenced. By October 25, 2020, production relocated to Atlanta, Georgia, where principal photography officially began at Trilith Studios, formerly Pinewood Atlanta Studios. Tom Holland, Zendaya, and Jacob Batalon joined the production after Holland completed filming Sony Pictures' Uncharted, 2022. Only 2 days earlier, Academy Award-winning cinematographer Mauro Fiore, known for his work on Avatar, 2009, served as director of photography, replacing longtime MCU cinematographer Seamus McGarvey. McGarvey was forced to withdraw from the production after contracting COVID-19, while the pandemic-related delay also created scheduling conflicts with his commitment to Joe Wright Cyrano, 2021. Originally scheduled to begin filming during the summer of 2020, the production had been postponed because of the global pandemic, requiring Marvel Studios and Sony Pictures to reorganize their entire shooting schedule. Despite these challenges, John Watts and the production team successfully resumed filming while implementing some of the industry's strictest COVID-19 safety protocols. Because Spider-Man: No Way Home was produced during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, Marvel Studios introduced extensive health and safety measures that fundamentally changed the filmmaking process. Daily testing, social distancing, reduced crew sizes, controlled access zones, and mandatory face coverings were enforced throughout production. Innovative digital technology was reportedly employed to reduce unnecessary contact between actors and makeup departments by allowing visual effects artists to digitally apply certain costume and makeup elements during post-production after performers had been scanned on set. A color-coded lighting system was also introduced across the soundstages to indicate when actors could safely remove their masks for filming and when both cast and crew were required to wear protective equipment while cameras were not rolling. These precautions enable the production to continue without significant interruptions while maintaining the secrecy required for one of Marvel Studios' most confidential projects. Filming in Atlanta continued for approximately 7 to 8 weeks under the dual working titles Serenity Now and The November Project before pausing briefly for the Christmas holidays. During this period, Benedict Cumberbatch arrived to film his scenes as Dr. Stephen Strange before departing for London to begin production on Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, 2022. Much of the film's early photography focused on Peter Parker's personal struggles following the revelation of his identity, the Department of Damage Control investigation, and Doctor Strange's spell, while the larger multiverse sequences were reserved for later stages of production once additional actors became available. In December 2020, reports emerged confirming that Alfred Molina would reprise his iconic role as Dr. Otto Octavius, Dr. Octopus from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, 2004. Shortly afterward, numerous industry reports indicated that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield would also return as their respective versions of Peter Parker, Spider-Man, igniting one of the largest waves of speculation in modern superhero cinema. The possibility of uniting the three live-action Spider-Men had actually been discussed years earlier during the development of Spider-Man: Into the Spider-Verse, 2018, but Sony Pictures ultimately abandoned the concept because executives believed audiences might find it confusing at that time. As rumors surrounding No Way Home intensified, additional reports suggested that Kirsten Dunst, Emma Stone, and several other actors from the previous Spider-Man franchises might also appear. Early screenplay drafts had indeed included even more returning characters, including Sally Field's version of Aunt Maya, but writers Chris McKenna and Eric Summers ultimately removed many of those appearances to prevent the film from becoming overcrowded and to preserve the emotional focus on Tom Holland's Peter Parker. The unprecedented secrecy surrounding the production became one of the defining aspects of the film's development. Marvel Studios and Sony Pictures implemented extraordinary security measures to prevent leaks regarding the returning legacy characters. Actors from previous Spider-Man films were reportedly transported around the set wearing large cloaks or concealed garments to avoid being photographed, while closed soundstages, confidential call sheets, and carefully controlled filming schedules further protected the production. Despite these efforts, Rumors continued to circulate online throughout filming, although Marvel, Sony, and many cast members including Tom Holland himself have repeatedly denied or declined to comment on speculation surrounding Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Holland consistently insisted during interviews that he had no knowledge of their involvement, statements that later became famous after the film's release because they successfully helped preserve one of the MCU's biggest surprises. Around Christmas 2020, the screenplay underwent significant revisions as additional legacy actors officially joined the production. According to McKenna and Summers, they rewrote the introductions of Tobey Maguire's and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man as well as much of the film's emotional third act shortly before those sequences entered production. Earlier in filming, the writers had concentrated primarily on completing the first and second acts because the availability of several returning actors remained uncertain. Once the casting was finalized, they refined the multiverse storyline to ensure that the legacy Spider-Man served Holland's emotional journey rather than functioning merely as nostalgic cameos. This late-stage rewriting ultimately produced some of the film's most celebrated scenes, including the rooftop conversation between the three Spider-Men and the climactic battle at the Statue of Liberty. In December 2020, Kevin Feige officially confirmed that Spider-Man: No Way Home would connect directly to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, further fueling speculation about the film's multiversal storyline. By January 2021, Charlie Cox had completed filming his scenes as Matt Murdock, marking the character's official introduction into the Marvel Cinematic Universe following his acclaimed portrayal in Marvel Television's Daredevil. Set photographs also revealed Christmas decorations throughout several filming locations, hinting that much of the story would take place during the holiday season. Between January 22 and 24, production filmed at Frederick Douglass High School in Atlanta, followed by additional photography at Midtown High School from March 19 to 21. Although the Atlanta public schools system had generally suspended the use of its facilities for film productions because of COVID-19 restrictions, special permission was granted because both schools had previously been used during the production of Spider-Man: Homecoming, 2017, ensuring visual continuity throughout Holland's Spider-Man trilogy. Throughout early 2021, Tom Holland continued promoting the film while carefully protecting its secrets. During interviews, he described No Way Home as the most ambitious standalone superhero film ever made and repeatedly denied reports that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were involved, helping preserve the film's most anticipated surprise until its theatrical release. On February 24, 2021, after months of playful marketing in which various cast members jokingly revealed fake titles, Sony Pictures and Marvel Studios officially announced the film's title as Spider-Man: No Way Home, continuing the home naming convention established by Spider-Man: Homecoming, 2017, and Spider-Man: Far From Home, 2019. Around the same time, Hannibal Buress was confirmed to be returning as Coach Wilson, with the actor later revealing behind-the-scenes footage from production in one of his music videos. Tom Holland also revealed that No Way Home would feature considerably more practical, hand-to-hand combat than the previous two MCU Spider-Man films, with director Jon Watts emphasizing a more grounded and physically intense style of action alongside the film's ambitious visual effects. The combination of practical stunt work, extensive motion capture performances, and cutting-edge CGI allowed the filmmakers to seamlessly integrate characters from multiple cinematic universes while preserving the emotional realism of the performances. After approximately 5 months of production, principal photography officially concluded on March 26, 2021. Despite the immense logistical challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, the demanding secrecy surrounding its multiverse storyline, and the complex coordination required to reunite actors from 3 separate Spider-Man franchises spanning nearly 2 decades, the production was completed successfully, paving the way for what would become one of the most acclaimed, commercially successful, and culturally significant superhero films ever released. Post-production on Spider-Man: No Way Home continued throughout 2021 while Marvel Studios and Sony Pictures undertook one of the most secretive marketing campaigns in modern blockbuster filmmaking. Despite the extensive efforts by the filmmakers to conceal the film's multiverse storyline, rumors regarding the return of legacy Spider-Man characters intensified throughout production and post-production. In April 2021, Alfred Molina officially confirmed that he would reprise his role as Dr. Otto Octavius, Dr. Octopus, explaining that he had originally been instructed not to discuss his involvement. What felt secrecy had become unnecessary after months of widespread media reports. Molina also revealed that the film continued directly from the ending of Spider-Man 2, 2004, with advanced digital de-aging technology used to recreate his appearance from the earlier film. Later that month, J.B. Smoove confirmed his return as teacher Julius Thal, while Charlie Cox publicly denied appearing in the film despite having already completed filming his scenes as Matt Murdock. During the same period, speculation surrounding the return of Andrew Garfield reached unprecedented levels. Garfield repeatedly denied any involvement, insisting that he had never been contacted about the project, although he occasionally tempered those denials with comments such as "never say never," fueling even greater fan speculation. Angry Rice was also confirmed to reprise her role as Betty Brant, while Emma Stone publicly denied reports that she would return as Gwen Stacy. Throughout the months leading up to the film's release, Sony Pictures executives acknowledged growing public confusion regarding the relationships between the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU, and Sony's Spider-Man Universe, SSU. In May 2021, Sony Pictures Motion Picture Group President Sanford Benesch explained that both studios had developed a long-term strategy to clarify how the two cinematic universes would coexist. He suggested that Spider-Man: No Way Home would provide audiences with a much clearer understanding of the connection between the franchises. Industry observers widely speculated that the introduction of the multiverse would serve as the narrative mechanism allowing Tom Holland's Spider-Man to move between both universes in future films. These theories gained further momentum following the release of the film's first teaser trailer in August 2021, which officially confirmed the return of Jon Favreau as Happy Hogan, Benedict Wong as Wong, and J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson, while also revealing the unmistakable mechanical tentacles of Dr. Octopus and teasing the return of several iconic villains from previous Spider-Man film series. The trailer also featured Electro's distinctive yellow electrical energy and Green Goblin's pumpkin bomb, strongly implying the return of Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin without immediately confirming his appearance. The teaser rapidly became one of the most viewed movie trailers in internet history, breaking numerous online viewership records within its first 24 hours and generating enormous anticipation worldwide. As promotional materials continued to be released, Marvel Studios and Sony Pictures remain remarkably disciplined in preserving the film's biggest surprise, the return of Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire as their respective Spider-Man. Garfield, in particular, repeatedly denied his involvement throughout numerous interviews during 2021, later admitting after the film's release that maintaining the deception had been both stressful and unexpectedly enjoyable because it allowed audiences to experience genuine surprise in theaters. Despite increasingly convincing evidence presented by fans, including leaked production photographs, alleged set videos, and digital analyses of trailer footage, Marvel, Sony, Garfield, Holland, and the rest of the cast consistently refused to confirm the multiversal crossover. This coordinated secrecy became one of the most successful examples of spoiler management in modern Hollywood, allowing audiences around the world to experience the appearance of the three live-action Spider-Men together without official confirmation before release. Another major focus of post-production involved coordinating the film with Sony's expanding Spider-Man universe. In October 2021, following the release of Venom: Let There Be Carnage, widespread speculation emerged that Tom Hardy would reprise his role as Eddie Brock, Venom, after the sequel's mid-credits scene transported the character into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Kevin Feige later confirmed that extensive collaboration had taken place between the creative teams behind Let There Be Carnage and No Way Home to ensure both scenes connected seamlessly, with John Watts personally directing the Venom, Let There Be Carnage mid-credits sequence during production of No Way Home. Hardy ultimately appeared in the film's own mid-credits scene, where Eddie Brock is returned to his home universe but inadvertently leaves behind a small fragment of the alien Venom symbiote, establishing a foundation for future MCU stories. During development, Marvel Studios also explored several alternate concepts involving Venom, including the possibility of Eddie Brock participating in the climactic Statue of Liberty battle and another storyline in which Tom Holland's Spider-Man would temporarily bond with the symbiote. Although these ideas were ultimately discarded, the remaining symbiote fragment ensured that Venom's presence would continue to influence future Spider-Man stories within the MCU. As marketing intensified during the fall of 2021, additional returning villains were gradually confirmed. Coverage in Empire magazine officially revealed that Thomas Hayden Church would reprise his role as Flint Marko, Sandman from Spider-Man 3, 2007, while Rhys Ifans would return as Dr. Kurt Connors, Lizard from The Amazing Spider-Man, 2012, joining previously confirmed villains Dr. Octopus, Electro, and Green Goblin. Church's involvement, however, was substantially reduced during production. Early versions of the screenplay reportedly featured a much larger storyline exploring Sandman's relationship with his daughter Penny, but repeated script revisions and the logistical difficulties created by the COVID-19 pandemic forced Marvel Studios to significantly scale back the character's role. Church ultimately recorded only limited dialogue and performed minimal motion capture work, with much of Sandman's final performance relying heavily on digital animation and previously recorded reference material. Throughout this period, Jon Watts and Kevin Feige continued refusing to verify the majority of online rumors, frequently reminding audiences that speculation surrounding the film should be treated cautiously. Additional casting announcements followed in late 2021, including Jorge Landborg Jr., who returned briefly as Jason Ionolo, and Arian Mode, who portrayed Department of Damage Control Agent Cleary. By mid-November 2021, the production had completed its final round of additional photography and pickup shots, allowing visual effects artists to finalize the film's increasingly complex multiverse sequences. Producer Amy Pascal described the film as the emotional culmination of the Homecoming trilogy, while Kirsten Dunst confirmed that she would not appear as Mary Jane Watson despite expressing openness to returning in future Spider-Man projects. The film's second official trailer, released in November 2021, formally confirmed the appearances of Willem Dafoe, Thomas Hayden Church, and Rhys Ifans, while carefully continuing to conceal Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield despite mounting public expectations. During development, McKenna and Summers also explored the possibility of introducing additional villains from previous Spider-Man films to create a fully realized Sinister Six, including Paul Giamatti's Alexei Sitsevich, Rhino from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, 2014, and even the return of Jake Gyllenhaal's Quentin Beck, Mysterio. Although these ideas were seriously considered, the filmmakers ultimately concluded that including too many legacy characters would dilute Peter Parker's emotional journey. As a result, Rhino was excluded entirely, while Mysterio appeared only through archival footage taken from Spider-Man: Far From Home. By December 2021, Martin Starr was confirmed to return as Teacher Roger Harrington, completing the roster of major supporting characters returning from Holland's previous Spider-Man films. Following the completion of principal photography, the film underwent an extensive post-production process involving one of the largest visual effects collaborations ever assembled for a Marvel Studios production. Editing was handled by Jeffrey Ford and Lee Folsom Boyd, who worked closely with Jon Watts to balance the emotional character-driven narrative with the film's ambitious multiverse spectacle. Hundreds of visual effects artists across numerous international studios collaborated to create the film's complex action sequences, digital environments, and legacy character recreations. Major visual effects vendors included Sony Pictures Imageworks, Digital Domain, Framestore, Luma Pictures, CineSight, Crafty Apes, Folks VFX, Monsters, Aliens, Robots, Zombies, Mars, Mr. X, Perception, Secret Lab, SS VFX, and Clear-Angle Studios. Their work encompassed digital de-aging for Alfred Molina and Willem Dafoe, the recreation of Dr. Octopus's CGI tentacles, Electro's redesigned electrical effects, Sandman's constantly shifting sand simulations, the Lizard's digital animation, the multiverse fracture sequences, and the spectacular climactic battle atop the Statue of Liberty. The visual effects also seamlessly integrated performers from 3 separate Spider-Man franchises into a single shared cinematic universe while preserving visual continuity with films released nearly 2 decades apart. Numerous concepts were developed during post-production but ultimately omitted from the final theatrical release. Early storyboards and screenplay drafts included a scene in which Tom Holland's Peter Parker visited J. Jonah Jameson at his apartment, as well as a cameo from the version of Spider-Man featured in Insomniac Games' Marvel's Spider-Man video game series. Additional unused ideas featured Dr. Octopus wearing his classic green and yellow comic book costume, a more comic-accurate redesign for the Lizard, Green Goblin incorporating pieces of Iron Man's armor into his equipment, and Ned Leeds riding the Goblin glider in homage to his comic book identity as the Hobgoblin. The pivotal confrontation between Peter Parker and the Green Goblin inside Happy Hogan's apartment also underwent numerous revisions. One abandoned version featured Michael Keaton's Adrian Toomes, Vulture appearing during the sequence, while another depicted the Green Goblin killing Aunt May by bombing Happy's apartment rather than mortally wounding her with his glider. Ultimately, the filmmakers chose the more intimate and emotionally devastating version featured in the finished film, allowing May's final conversation with Peter and her delivery of Spider-Man's defining lesson: with great power, there must also come great responsibility to become one of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's most memorable and emotionally powerful moments. As a final connection to the MCU's future, Spider-Man: No Way Home concluded with the post-credits teaser for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, 2022. Replacing Marvel Studios' traditional post-credits stinger with the first official preview of the next chapter in the MCU's expanding multiverse saga. Released shortly after the film's theatrical debut, the teaser underscored No Way Home's pivotal role in launching Marvel Studios' multiverse saga while providing a direct narrative bridge to Doctor Strange's next adventure. By the time post-production concluded, the film had successfully combined groundbreaking visual effects, unprecedented secrecy, and nearly 2 decades of Spider-Man cinematic history into one of the most ambitious crossover events ever produced, establishing Spider-Man: No Way Home as both a celebration of the character's legacy and a defining milestone in the evolution of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Spider-Man: No Way Home became one of the most successful films in cinematic history and one of the defining box office achievements of the post-pandemic era. Produced on an estimated $200 million budget, the film grossed $814.9 million in the United States and Canada and $1.107 billion in international markets, finishing its theatrical run with the worldwide total of approximately $1.921 billion. It emerged as the highest-grossing film of 2021, the highest-grossing Spider-Man film ever released, and Sony Pictures' highest-grossing film of all time, surpassing the previous studio record held by Spider-Man: Far From Home, 2019. At the time of its release, it became the 6th highest-grossing film in history worldwide, the 3rd highest-grossing film ever in the United States and Canada, and one of only a handful of films to surpass the $1.9 billion mark globally. It also became the first film since Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, 2019, to exceed $1 billion worldwide, accomplishing the feat despite the continued impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on global theatrical attendance. The film reached the $1 billion milestone in just 12 days, making it the 3rd fastest film ever to achieve that benchmark at the time and the first and only film released during the height of the pandemic to cross the $1 billion threshold. In North America, it surpassed Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle, 2017, to become Sony Pictures' highest-grossing domestic release, while its extraordinary commercial performance was widely credited with revitalizing the global theatrical exhibition industry during one of its most challenging periods. Deadline Hollywood estimated that the film ultimately generated an estimated net profit of approximately $610 million after accounting for production costs, worldwide marketing expenses, theatrical distribution, talent participations, and ancillary revenue streams such as home entertainment, making it one of the most profitable films released during the decade. The film's success also significantly contributed to the financial recovery of cinema chains worldwide, with Cineworld, the world's second-largest theater operator at the time, reporting that the film helped restore its global revenue to nearly 88% of pre-pandemic 2019 levels, underscoring its enormous impact on the theatrical business. In the United States and Canada, Spider-Man: No Way Home shattered numerous opening weekend records and became one of the strongest domestic performers in history. The film earned an astonishing $121.85 million on its opening day, including approximately $50 million from Thursday night preview screenings alone. This represented the second-largest opening day in history, trailing only Avengers: Endgame 2019, while also setting a new record for the largest opening day ever for a December release. During its opening weekend, the film generated an extraordinary $260 million, surpassing Avengers: Infinity War 2018, to record the second biggest domestic opening weekend of all time, again behind only Avengers: Endgame. The remarkable debut occurred at a time when movie theaters were still operating under varying pandemic restrictions, making its performance even more significant for the industry. According to estimates, approximately 54.4 million people attended the film in theaters across the United States and Canada during its initial weeks of release. Following its record-breaking debut, No Way Home remained the #1 film at the North American box office for 4 consecutive weekends, finally relinquishing the top position during its 5th weekend to Scream 2022. Demonstrating exceptional staying power, the film reclaimed the #1 position during both its 6th and 7th weekends, a rare achievement for a blockbuster of its scale. In March 2022, it became only the 3rd film in history to surpass $800 million domestically, joining Star Wars: The Force Awakens 2015, and Avengers: Endgame. Industry analyst Paul Durgarabadian of Comscore described No Way Home as arguably the most important movie to the movie theater industry ever, emphasizing that its unprecedented success reaffirmed the continued viability of exclusive theatrical releases and restored confidence in cinemas following the prolonged disruption caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Even after spending more than 3 months in release, the film remained among the top-performing movies in North America. When the extended edition, Spider-Man: No Way Home and More Fun Stuff version, premiered in September 2022, it once again returned to the top of the domestic box office charts on its opening day with approximately $1.8 million and ultimately earned $6.5 million over the 4-day Labor Day weekend. This represented the largest opening weekend ever for a re-released Marvel Cinematic Universe film, surpassing the reissues of both Avengers: Endgame 2019 and Spider-Man: Far From Home 2019. Internationally, Spider-Man: No Way Home proved equally dominant, breaking opening day and opening weekend records across numerous territories. The film earned approximately $43.6 million from 15 international markets on its first day alone, setting new Sony Pictures opening day records in countries including South Korea, the United Kingdom, Mexico, Italy, and Taiwan. In South Korea, the film opened with approximately $5.28 million, surpassing the opening day performance of Spider-Man: Far From Home by more than 11% while recording the largest single-day box office total for any film released during the COVID-19 pandemic in that market. In the United Kingdom, it established a new opening day record for a December release by earning approximately £7.6 million, about $10.1 million. Exceeding the previous record set by No Time to Die 2021. In India, No Way Home delivered one of the country's biggest Hollywood openings ever, collecting between A superscript 1 $320 million and A superscript 1 $345 million, approximately $3.7 A $4.0 million, on its first day and surpassing both Avengers, Endgame, 2019, and the Bollywood blockbuster Suryavanshi, 2021. Across its first 5 days of international release, the film generated approximately $340.8 million from 60 overseas markets, one of the strongest global launches in cinema history. Throughout Latin America, the film achieved exceptional results, becoming the highest-grossing film of all time in Mexico, while also ranking among the highest-grossing films ever released in Brazil, Central America, and Ecuador. Among its largest international markets were the United Kingdom, approximately $127.3 million, Mexico, $76.2 million, Australia, $67.9 million, France, $65.2 million, and South Korea, $63.1 million. Its exceptional performance across nearly every major international territory demonstrated the enduring global popularity of Spider-Man and highlighted the universal appeal of the film's multiverse storyline, nostalgic legacy characters, and emotional conclusion. Ultimately, Spider-Man: No Way Home not only became one of the highest-grossing superhero films ever produced but also played a pivotal role in restoring audience confidence in theatrical movie-going, cementing its legacy as one of the most commercially significant and culturally influential blockbusters of the 21st century. Spider-Man: No Way Home received widespread critical acclaim upon its release, with reviewers praising its emotional storytelling, ambitious multiverse narrative, heartfelt celebration of 2 decades of Spider-Man cinema, and the performances of its ensemble cast. Critics widely regarded the film as a satisfying conclusion to Tom Holland's first Spider-Man trilogy while also serving as a respectful tribute to the cinematic legacies established by Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Particular praise was directed toward John Watts' confident direction, Chris McKenna and Eric Summers' screenplay, the film's balance of humor, spectacle, nostalgia, and emotional depth, and the performances of Tom Holland, Zendaya, Willem Dafoe, Andrew Garfield, Alfred Molina, and Benedict Cumberbatch. Many reviewers highlighted the film's ability to transform what could have been simple fan service into a character-driven story centered on Peter Parker's growth, sacrifice, and acceptance of responsibility. The emotional impact of Aunt May's death, the reunion of the 3 live-action Spider-Man, Garfield's redemption through saving MJ, and Peter's heartbreaking decision to erase himself from everyone's memory were frequently cited as some of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's most powerful and emotionally resonant moments. While a minority of critics felt the plot occasionally became overcrowded by its numerous returning characters and extensive multiverse mythology, the overwhelming consensus was that No Way Home successfully balanced its nostalgic elements with meaningful character development, delivering one of the franchise's most emotionally satisfying and crowd-pleasing installments. On the review aggregation website Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an impressive 93% approval rating based on 429 critical reviews, with an average rating of 7.9. The site's critical consensus states, a bigger, bolder Spider-Man sequel, No Way Home expands the franchise's scope and stakes without losing sight of its humor and heart. On Metacritic, which assigns weighted average scores to professional reviews, the film received a score of 71 out of 100 based on 60 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Audience reception proved even stronger. Moviegoers surveyed by CinemaScore awarded the film a rare A+ grade, making it the first live-action Spider-Man film and only the 4th Marvel Cinematic Universe film at the time to receive the prestigious rating after The Avengers, 2012, Black Panther, 2018, and Avengers, Endgame, 2019. Post-Track likewise reported exceptionally enthusiastic audience reactions, with 96% of surveyed viewers giving the film a positive overall score and 91% stating that they would definitely recommend it to others, reflecting the film's extraordinary word of mouth and sustained commercial success. Among individual critics, Amelia Berwing of IGN awarded the film 8 out of 10, praising its emotional payoff and the way its consequences felt fully earned. She highlighted the performances of Willem Dafoe, Alfred Molina, and Jamie Foxx, noting that the returning villains were given meaningful roles rather than serving as nostalgic cameos. Pete Hammond of Deadline Hollywood highly praised Jon Watts' direction and the chemistry between Tom Holland, Zendaya, and Jacob Batalon, describing the trio as priceless while celebrating the film as pure blockbuster entertainment that rewarded longtime Spider-Man fans. Peter Debreuge of Variety particularly praised the returns of Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, writing that the film provided satisfying emotional closure for audiences who had followed Spider-Man's cinematic journey across the previous 2 decades. Don Kay of Den of Geek awarded the film 4 out of 5 stars, applauding its thrilling action sequences, engaging performances, and heartfelt character interactions. He concluded that No Way Home successfully honored every previous Spider-Man film while simultaneously placing Holland's Peter Parker on a bold new path for future stories. Jennifer Bissett of Connect similarly praised the film's ambitious storytelling and emotional maturity, suggesting that it pushed Holland's Spider-Man into significantly darker and more compelling territory while reinforcing his evolution into one of the MCU's central heroes. Sandra Hall of the Sydney Morning Herald, also awarding 4 out of 5 stars, admired the film's playful self-awareness and multiverse concept, observing that despite its frequent references to previous Spider-Man films, it never lost sight of Peter Parker's deeply personal emotional journey. Other major publications likewise responded positively while acknowledging a handful of narrative shortcomings. Kevin Maher of The Times gave the film 4 out of 5 stars, calling it a dynamite blast of smarty-pants postmodernism that expertly blended nostalgia with genuine emotional stakes without sacrificing its heart. Benjamin Lee of The Guardian awarded 3 out of 5 stars, praising Jon Watts for orchestrating an entertaining crossover event featuring beloved villains and legacy characters, though he argued that the screenplay occasionally lacked the lighthearted energy that had characterized earlier MCU Spider-Man films. Kate Rebland of IndieWire assigned the film a B, describing it as emotionally rewarding but somewhat uneven, criticizing portions of the script for spending excessive time setting up inevitable multiverse revelations before allowing the story's strongest emotional moments to emerge. John DeFore of The Hollywood Reporter viewed the film's multiverse premise as an effective response to criticism that Holland's Spider-Man had become overly dependent on Iron Man's influence, noting that No Way Home finally restored Peter Parker's independence and reinforced his identity as a hero capable of standing entirely on his own. Many reviewers also emphasized the film's unique theatrical experience and its importance to audiences returning to cinemas after the COVID-19 pandemic. Brian Lowry of CNN praised both the film's humor and its crowd-pleasing nature, observing that it was clearly designed to be experienced with an enthusiastic audience reacting collectively to its surprises, emotional moments, and nostalgic reveals. Richard Roeper of the Chicago Sun-Times awarded the film 3 out of 4 stars, praising Tom Holland as the strongest live-action Spider-Man to date while highlighting Zendaya's warmth, intelligence, and emotional presence as essential to the film's success. Although Roeper found the visual effects competent rather than groundbreaking, he argued that the emotional investment in Peter and MJ's relationship ultimately carried the film beyond its spectacle. Reviewers also singled out Andrew Garfield's performance as one of the film's biggest surprises, with many considering his emotionally charged portrayal of an older, more burdened Spider-Man to be among the finest performances of his career. His redemption arc, culminating in the rescue of MJ, a reversal of his failure to save Gwen Stacy in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, 2014, was repeatedly cited as one of the film's most emotionally satisfying moments. Willem Dafoe's return as the Green Goblin likewise received universal acclaim, with critics describing him as a terrifying, psychologically complex antagonist whose performance elevated the film well beyond the conventional superhero spectacle. Although the critical response was overwhelmingly positive, a small number of reviewers expressed reservations. Bill Jabiri of Vulture described the film as aggressively mediocre, criticizing its action sequences, comedic pacing, and screenplay, while nevertheless praising Willem Dafoe for bringing renewed psychological complexity to the Green Goblin and calling Andrew Garfield the film's standout performer. Hannah Strong of Little White Lies criticized what she perceived as limited character growth for Tom Holland's Peter Parker, arguing that the narrative relied too heavily on nostalgia and fan service instead of developing new ideas. She felt that the screenplay occasionally prioritized references to previous Spider-Man films over cohesive storytelling. Similar criticisms from other reviewers centered on the film's dense plotting, extensive exposition surrounding the multiverse, and the challenge of balancing numerous returning legacy characters within a single narrative. Nevertheless, these criticisms represented a relatively small minority compared to the overwhelmingly enthusiastic response from both critics and audiences. In retrospect, Spider-Man: No Way Home has come to be widely regarded as one of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's defining achievements and one of the most successful superhero films ever produced. Critics have continued to praise its ability to unite three generations of Spider-Man fans while remaining fundamentally focused on Peter Parker's emotional journey rather than nostalgia alone. Its combination of heartfelt character drama, spectacular action, respectful treatment of legacy characters, and emotionally resonant conclusion has led many publications and fans to rank it among the greatest Spider-Man films ever made, alongside Spider-Man 2, 2004, and Spider-Man: Into the Spider-Verse, 2018. Beyond its critical success, the film has been recognized as a landmark cultural event that demonstrated the enduring popularity of theatrical blockbuster filmmaking and established a new benchmark for cinematic crossover storytelling within the superhero genre.